welcome to another live. We're not live. We just did an Instagram live. If you guys want to see us live and interact, go to the Natural Bearded Rose Instagram page. We're going live every Friday at 10 a.m. and stupid fucking live connection. That's all I have to say. Like,
is it the live's connection or is it your phone's connection?
My phone. How many of you guys you technology makes you want to eat this microphone? No, I don't know. I just sometimes hate technology so bad.
Oh, I've
been having phone issues. Like, I don't know what's wrong with my phone, but we did an amazing live, and we're gonna email people a recap because it was spotty connection.
Hey, welcome back. You weren't here last week.
Oh yeah, that was good. You guys did good. I always like seeing shiny Katie's face in here. You know, just talking about whatever.
I always love that. I'm like, hey, let's go on the podcast room. We're gonna do one. She's like, we're gonna do what? I'm like, yeah, right now. Let's go.
I can't even remember the topic, but I remember it was good.
The topic, what the fuck did we talk about last week?
I don't know, but I really liked it. And every I think I'm starting to feel sad. I'm like, oh, do people want Katie instead of me? We're getting so many.
No, you were gone.
No, but we get like so much positive feedback, so I'm like, fine.
I need you to shop your feelings back this way, ma'am. Please and thank you.
Yeah, Ani's all, ooh, new sneakers again. I've been having some issues and personal stuff, but I was like, yeah, I'm shopping my feelings. Okay, leave me alone. My feet must look good during this process.
But you know what? I do like those shoes. They're real cute.
They're cute.
I love tennis shoes. I pretty much do anything I can to wear sneakers all day long.
I'm not trying to ignore you. My chair is literally like...
I didn't even notice.
Anyway.
Well, today, I actually saw this quote today. So even on Instagram this morning, I was really talking about boundaries and how I think it's so interesting that whenever you set out to create boundaries, the only people that get fucking angry with you are the people that are like benefiting from you not having boundaries.
Right.
And some examples that I had are, for example, like giving discounts at your place of business. Like, yeah, you tend to give discounts to friends and family and friends of friends and your brother, sister's girlfriend, whatever. And then all of a sudden you're like, hey, I can't give a discount. And they're like, what? Like, appalled because that benefited them.
Or I love when they're like, I'm not working Saturdays anymore. They're like, oh, well, I work every other day. You're like, excuse me. Yeah. So how do you know?
Don't know what to tell you.
Yeah. And I mean, but honestly, that's like our industry. We've always worked Saturdays. And I always like tell my artists, I'm like, can you go to your doctor on a Saturday? No. There's a lot of businesses that are closed on Saturdays, but whatever you choose to do, like when you tell your clients, I'm not going to do this, that like, they're like, wait, but you've always done Saturdays. You're like, well, you don't have to be offended. I think we get so triggered. We're like, fuck you, Sarah. Like, I don't want to work Saturdays, but it's like, it doesn't, even if they're like, oh, but I work, be like, no, I understand, but I'm going to be focusing on these days. Let me know if you want to get in. You don't have to be butthurt about it. Just like, don't apologize. Just say, this is what it is.
Yeah. And I think it also depends on how the person acts, because other examples I had are like, if people come over to your house unannounced, that blows my mind when people do that. But people are just like, hey, I'm here.
I think it's weird when people call me unannounced. I'm like, who the fuck said you could call me?
Oh, you're calling now? But things like that, or even like, so I don't have children, but I know other parents have experienced this, like when they set parenting rules and they're like, this is how I'm raising my children. This is what we're doing. And then friends or in-laws or parents or grandparents come over and they're like, you said we're doing A, well, we're going to do B. And you're like, no. Like, my children, my rules, this is how it goes. Things like that, or not even respecting your time off, or when people are like, you need to work 70 hours a week. It's like, I hear things like that. And I'm like, you must not give a shit about this person. Right. And that's what I think makes it so hard is whenever you go to set boundaries, you're doing it because it's something healthy for you. Mm-hmm. Like, even for me, good luck asking me a work question on a fucking Sunday.
You shouldn't do that anymore?
No, you can. I just probably won't answer until Monday. If I feel like answering,
not to, unless
I
feel like I'm like, I need to know this before Monday. Like,
I feel like you're actually pretty respectful. I know I can't get a hold of you Saturday mornings.
I know.
But your Saturday's my Sunday.
Yeah. Sundays I'm like back into like, I get kind of bored. I'm like, 2 days off is too much for me. I need to work on something.
I only get my 2 days. I don't care. Good luck getting a hold of me. And then it just depends. But boundaries like that, what I've come to really realize is the people who get most angry with you is because they're benefiting some way. But then it always takes me to the point of like, did you care about me though?
Yeah.
Were we only friends because you had this added benefit?
I've had 2 clients that are like, okay, that's just not going to work for my schedule. And they're really angry. And then they want to come back and I'm like, you were kind of a jerk. Like, no. You know what I mean? And I'll be like, I'm sorry, my books are full. But then I've had clients leave and they're like, okay, I'll have to, I don't know if I can get work off, and they'll go somewhere else or whatever. And then they'll come back and be like, yeah, that's okay. I'll make it work. And they're not weird about it. And I'm like, okay, perfect. I'm like, and I don't say, oh, yeah, sorry about that. I'm like, okay, that's great. Yeah, let me tell you when my next opening is. And it's so funny because I always hear like people say, oh, don't apologize for this. I don't think I have no issue saying sorry to somebody for anything. I just don't think you should apologize for actions that you need to make in your business that don't require an apology. Like, you shouldn't be sorry that you're not working Saturdays anymore. You're not sorry.
No.
You know what I mean? So I just feel like we get in our head about like, the clients' reactions and things like that. And I always like tell myself and artists and people on the team, I'm like, I know it sounds bad, but you just have to stay neutral and like almost like when you want to get in a fight with your boyfriend or your significant other and you're like, I'm going to say something I don't mean, so I'm going to walk away. And so I've always had that mentality towards clients. I'm like, keep it neutral, and then literally like tell me you've increased prices or whatever it is, then walk away. Mm-hmm. Like for me, that just kind of works because I'm like, I can look at things on a more logical level.
Well, and so even like when it comes to apologizing, I know I'm stubborn. I actually have zero issue saying that I'm sorry.
Yeah.
If I like, am I stubborn? Yeah, I'm the first to admit it for sure. But if I look at something objectively and I'm like, Ani, like you were a dick. You were wrong. Yeah. You shouldn't have said that, or you shouldn't have done this. I have zero ego.
Well, that's accountability.
Yeah. And I've just learned like you don't get to have an ego about that if you're fucking wrong. And like it's okay to be wrong. Like,
and there's two different sorries. There's sorries like that where you're taking accountability for your actions. And then there's sorries where you're like, sorry, because you feel bad. And you're like, sorry, I raised my prices. Because sorry, I'm not working Saturdays. Like, you don't need to apologize for that. That's not even a heartfelt apology.
Yes, there's a genuine, like, I'm sorry. And I'm hoping if I say this, it's going to make the tension a little bit less weird. I'm so sorry. Like, no, you're not.
I'm kind of surprised that artists get so panicky because in hair school, we always learned, like, hey, you're going to be opening those foils and you're going to have moments where you're like, oh, shit.
Hair gods.
And you're literally, they would always teach me, I remember this from hair school from an instructor forever ago. She's like, you're a duck on the water. And on top, you're calm and collected, but underneath, your feet are paddling 1,000,000 miles an hour. But the client doesn't know. They just see a calm duck. Because you could mess up the appointment if you open a foil and you're like, oh, shit, it's orange. Well, I hope this works out. Like, the client's then like, oh, my God. Like, so go into that mindset when you're making changes in your business. Like, go into it like a duck on water where you're calm and you're cool and you're collected. You go into it when you fuck up a color, and don't tell me you haven't messed up a color because everybody's messed up a color.
Yes.
Like, that's how you need to react when you're making changes in your business. It's kind of like, okay, that doesn't work for you. No problem. You know what I mean? Keep it professional, keep it light, and create your own boundaries that work specifically for you.
And I also realize that I feel like sometimes talking about boundaries inside of business is so easy, but then boundaries when it comes to your personal life is so difficult. We actually recently in the academy just had a call with a student that she's like, I'll be honest, I come from a pretty fucked up family. It's a very toxic environment to the point where like I don't want to say messed her up, but like she did develop an eating disorder from things that were like happening. And she's like, I've recently started putting like more boundaries down and more rules. She's like, but they keep breaking the rules. She's like, they don't listen. She goes, so then it's like every time I see them, she's like, it fucks me up like mentally.
It could be triggering her from the past, you know what I mean?
Well, it's not even the past, but it's still fucking happening today. Like, and that's the crazy thing. So even hearing her talk about this, something that I saw is that you have to be mature enough to forgive people, because I truly believe that like holding grudges and being angry and kind of like looking at someone and being like, I fucking hate you, which, hey, I've had moments like that. That doesn't really affect the other person. It affects you.
Yeah.
It's like, it's your soul, your energy to look at someone and every time you see their stupid fucking face, be like, I hate you. That fucks with you more than it does with them. So be mature enough to let that go and like grow past it, but also have an understanding of, I forgive you, but that doesn't mean I want nor need you in my life.
Right.
Because there's a difference.
Right. And it's so crazy because it will really weigh on you. And I feel like I can let go of things pretty easy.
Yeah.
And I try to like look at my role in the situation. And a lot of times it's not like I physically call the person. I'm like, hey, I'm so sorry, blah, 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 blah. Because you never know. They might be like, screw you. I don't care what you have to say. You know what I mean? Or they might be like, oh, thank you, or whatever it is. But it's more of like for me, like coming to terms and coming to peace in my own heart. Yeah. And I told you this story, but Garrett and I walked into a restaurant a couple weeks ago and we ran into somebody that we had a severely ugly falling out with. Yeah. I didn't even notice her. I walked right by. I sit down. Garrett comes through. He looks like he's seen a ghost or punched a guy in the face or something. And I was like, what? And he goes, so-and-so's over there. And I was like, oh, should we buy him a drink? Like, that's as casual as my response was. I was like, I didn't even see him. Like, to me, I had moved on, and I was like, I didn't even notice. Like, I didn't want to be friends and say hi. I didn't feel like I needed to be like, how are you? Are things good? And be like fake and act like we were friends.
Because you don't actually care. No offense. Like,
yeah,
you don't
I
care.
don't care, but I'm also not, I didn't feel like I needed to go up and be like, you're still an asshole, blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean?
It's unnecessary.
It's unnecessary. And I was like, should we buy him a drink? I didn't think about that. And Garrett was so irritated, but Garrett, I think he took it more personal, and he was just like, no. And like he was just kind of like grumpy, and he's like, oh, I went up to him. I was like, oh no. I'm like, what did you say? Anyways, I won't say what he said, but I was just like, okay. I was like, to be honest with you, I don't really care. Wish them the best. They're not on my radar anymore. I'm not going to pretend like we're friends, but I am focused on what I'm doing, and I've kind of dropped all those like feelings and emotions, right?
Yeah.
So I've kind of like just I've taken accountability in the sense that like people that work with me now, I'm like, I won't repeat those actions that I did before that caused an ugly falling out that I don't believe was absolutely necessary, right?
Yeah.
So my way of forgiving myself and moving on is to correct things in my business to help me have better team members and things like that, right? So, but I like what you said, how you're like, some people, like, you just don't need them in your life. Like,
yeah.
And I think a lot of people think they need to literally physically call them and be like, let's mend our ways. I'm like, no, you just need to kind of let go of those feelings, that guilt, and process it to where you're like, okay, I feel fine. I've moved on. And here's what I learned from it.
Yeah. And that goes for professional relationships and personal relationships. Because like I said, going back to this artist, I will say I'm very blessed to come from a really great family. Like, I'm still very, very, very close to my parents and my brothers. But even in that, it's okay to decide that family members aren't good for you because, and I'm going to sound, I almost feel like so cruel.
Yeah.
Not every person in the world is a great person.
Why is it that we think that our family, just because we're blood, we think that we have to be like really close with them?
Well, and we excuse their behavior more. We say, oh, well, but it's my dad, but it's my mom, but it's my sister. Okay, but a toxic environment and them like fucking with you mentally, emotionally, physically, whatever it is, like, that still messes with you.
And the people that you think you're closest to, if they're saying things or communicating things to you that you're like, I would never let any of my friends, my clients, my husband talk to me or be in this environment, but yet I'm settling with my family. And I'm pretty close with my family, but I even realized I had to create boundaries within my family. And I had to expect certain things out of each relationships. You know what I mean? And when I got to that place, because I was kind of bitter towards my family for a little bit. And then I kind of like came back around and I was just like, especially like, I won't say who, but I had kind of a falling out with one of my siblings for like a solid year. And then we like kind of came back together and I was like, I don't need to tell you every single thing that's going on in my life and expect you to care. Like, that sounds cold. I was like, but I still love you and appreciate you and I can talk with you and we can talk about kids and life and whatever. But the relationship that I had wasn't serving me. I felt like I was always like giving and she was taking. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. And in those, it's so hard, guys. It's so hard. But I always say, I think I read something once that said like the worst feeling in the world is to be surrounded by people, but still feel alone.
Yeah.
And and I just want you to really think about that because we've had so many artists in the Academy come forward and they're like, man, like I can think of another artist specifically. She's like, I really looked up to my sister-in-law. Like I thought we were tight. Like we were cool. She's successful. She's smart. She's beautiful. And like, I've always wanted to be like her. And now that I'm successful, beautiful in my own right, like I'm doing my thing.
Like it.
All of a sudden the sister-in-law started kind of like,
success.
Started like shitting on her. Yeah. And she our artist almost had like, not like an identity crisis, but she was almost kind of like, I don't know what to do now. Yeah. The person I had always like looked up to, she goes,
she grew past her.
Yeah. And she's like, I don't respect her now. I don't particularly like her. And and those are really hard feelings to deal with because then you almost feel kind of stupid at the same time that you're like,
did I do something wrong?
Yeah,
Like,
and you're like, I used to look up to you, but you're kind of a dick. Like, am I so blind and stupid? But it's not that. So you can't even let yourself feel that way. It's people change and grow, and that's okay. And I feel like especially artists that come into the academy and like do events with us, we require growth at such a rapid pace that it's either you're willing to look at your own actions and take accountability and see your growth, or you're not. But also understanding that growing so quickly means sometimes people do feel left behind, but it's not up to you.
You're almost like, how did I not see this? But your standard of who you is in your circle all of a sudden goes up. And that's why you like, we've talked about this before, like sometimes your circle gets smaller and smaller and smaller. But it's like, I feel like I have layers to my circle. I always talk about my onion. I don't know why I think of it as an onion, because it's like I have many circles. But that inner core circle is very tight and very few people. And then there's layers to my circles. So I'm still associated with a lot of people. I still have a lot of friends. But it's just I've learned to have realistic expectations with each layer of my onion, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I actually really like how you just said that. You have to have realistic expectations based on the type of relationship that you have. And that's okay. Or if you look at a relationship and you're like, you know what? This served me for who I was, but it does not serve me for who I am. It's okay to no longer have that relationship. And that doesn't mean you have to call and say, I'm breaking up with you. We're not friends. Don't be fucking weird about it. Like, some things just fall off naturally.
Yeah. And sometimes it's, again, creating boundaries and creating, like, if it's like somebody you feel like you're in a toxic relationship and you're talking to them every day and you feel like they're just sucking energy from you, I would encourage you to be like, okay, I need to distance myself from this person. This is making me unhappy. I feel like this. I feel like crap. I feel like I'm emotionally drained. Like, you probably need to distance yourself from those type of situations. That doesn't mean you have to be like, hey, we can't be friends anymore. But it might be something where you have a conversation with that friend, and sometimes it can be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It can be like, hey, you know what? I feel like you don't ever ask me about me. Or I feel like this is a one-sided relationship. And that can be really, really uncomfortable. But then at least you know, like, okay, well, she's not going to think it's weird when I'm like, hey, I don't want to talk to you every day.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Dude, I just started watching this show on Netflix called Never Have I Ever. Oh my God, I'm so in love with it. It's about this like teenage girl and her kind of like navigating life in high school. And she comes from like a very strict Indian family. And at one point, so basically, if there's a character that ever did everything wrong, it's her. Like every decision, obviously as an adult, I'm looking at this and I'm like, that's a terrible, you shouldn't be doing that. But then I'm like, you're 15 in the show. Yeah, we're all fucking idiots at 15. This kind of makes sense now. But literally at one point, it's three best friends. Two of them look at the main character and they're like, we need a break from you because you have been a terrible friend. And maybe you missing us and not seeing us every day will have you like see what a terrible friend you've been. And like, even like here, it's kind of like what we're talking about. Like watching that, you're like, cold.
It's harsh.
That shit was cold. Y'all are 15 having these conversations. Good for you. But like, even in that, I do think that's important that sometimes you're like, I still love, because
I need a break. Yeah, it's like, I need some space, literally.
Yeah. And I always say, having love for someone and liking someone are two very different things.
Right.
I can love you, but not fucking like you in this circumstance and instance. And that's to me, that's okay. As long as you're not like screaming that in their face. If you're saying it, you're a dick.
Well,
but
I've shared this story before, but there's been time. I mean, well, honestly, like when I felt like shit went sideways in all areas of my life, this was probably like right when I was starting my brand. I literally was like, I was so bitter and angry towards everyone and everything. And I was like, there's too much noise in my fucking head. And I remember I just got this impression that I need to work on me and I need to tune out all the noise. And we physically moved to a completely different state. And it's not like I called everybody in my circle and I'm like, you're a jerk. And like I knew it was me and what I was going through, but I just knew I needed space and clarity for me. And we literally packed up. We moved to Arizona to this small town that honestly, the closest Target was 20 minutes away. Like it was kind of far out there. And I was like, where did we move? But I realized in the time and the space that I was in, I needed that. I needed just quiet and I needed to work on myself and I needed to work on my business. And I kind of just had to tune out the noise in order to see a clear path of what I needed to do next. So what I want to ask you guys is, what noise can you guys tune out to really get done the shit that you know you need to get done? Honestly. Like, and that might be taking some of those layers of your onions and they're now kind of on an outside layer so that you can really focus on what you need to get done. Because if it's sucking energy away from you, then you always have the excuse of like, I don't have time, I have too much going on my plate, I have too much like, and it's just because you're emotionally waterlogged right now.
Mm-hmm. And so I completely agree with what you're saying. And so even with that, guys, just remember, it doesn't matter if it's blood-related family, close family, friends, employees, boss, like it doesn't matter. Take a look at the relationship in your life. And if you're looking at it and you're like, this does not serve me,
Right.
I'm unhappy, I'm miserable, I'm disrespected, I'm not appreciated, whatever it is, if it's messing with you, there is a chance you need to cut and sever that tie, and they just don't play an active role in your life.
Or distance.
Yeah, and that doesn't make you wrong. It doesn't make you an asshole. It doesn't make you a
Gives
bitch.
Space to think.
It's you need to do it for your own like mental capacity and like mentality and space and spirituality, whatever it is, like you need to do it for you, and there's nothing wrong with that. Because remember, the only people that will be upset about you setting boundaries are the people who are benefiting from you having no boundaries.
Right.
So really take a look at your life. So I know this is a bit of a shorter podcast today, guys, but thanks for being here with us. And I will also say, well, Danielle, actually, any final words?
Yes, we have one more convention. I'm going to tell you guys, it's a 2-day virtual convention. So if you do hair and you love the podcast, like, what are you waiting for? Like, we want you guys to come join our community of artists. The 2-day experience, again, is virtual, so you can do it anywhere. It's $1,000. It's like the lowest we've had our education in a really long time.
Yeah.
You'll learn everything you need to know with Natural Beauty Rose. You'll also learn the business marketing and sales that's taught in my phase 1 of my academy. The academy is a 1-year program. If you guys want more information on the academy, we do have open enrollment with that. But if you're like, I don't know, I love you guys, I want to be a part of it, the virtual event is a perfect foot in the door kind of thing. So we're going to be closing tickets. By the time you guys listen to this, there's
It will
going to
only
be
be open
like
for like 3 more
there's
days.
like 3 days. So stop sitting on the fence. This is the lowest our education has and will ever be. And we'd love to educate you guys. We'd love to show you a good time and really give you a skill that we know that you and your clients truly believe in and will love and use behind the chair.
So guys, thank you for being here with us, and we will be back next week. And of course, if you ever have a topic or a question and you're like, I need help, I talk about this, send us a DM. We always look at them and keep tracks. But until then, we'll see you guys next week.